Funding for the Nash Villager podcast comes from the Hal Allen Clinic, specializing in minimally invasive robotic spine surgery and laser brain tumor surgery. For 40 years, the neurosurgeons of the Hal Allen Clinic have been national leaders in brain and spine surgery.
This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nash Villager podcast. It's September 29th, 2025. 25 years ago today, the city of Nashville and the state of Tennessee agreed to a deal that made way for the conversion of one of the city's more remarkable bridges to become the most unique bridge over the Cumberland, the Siegenthaler Pedestrian Bridge. Now, it was formerly known as the Shelby Street Bridge and before that the Sparkman Street Bridge, but it was in bad shape in the year 2000, not really fit to handle the continued weight of vehicle traffic. But at the time, it was, in a lot of people's opinions, the most attractive of the downtown bridges. And it was determined that it could still serve a valuable role, especially because now there was a football stadium right there at one end. The trick was figuring out how to pay for the kind of repairs and renovations needed to make it a pedestrian bridge. The solution turned out to be a funding swap with the state that also involved administering some federal money, basically rebalancing the arrangement of which level of government was responsible for which bills so that the pedestrian bridge conversion could happen at the same time as improvements to Briley Parkway. The bridge reopened to foot and bicycle traffic in 2003. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Back in the year 2000, the deal between Nashville and the state didn't seem like anything too special. It was helpful, but not really anything to write home about. It used to be common for the city and the state to sort of swap things around in ways that offered some kind of mutual benefit. Probably the biggest example is in Germantown, where First Horizon Park, the stadium that's home to the Nashville Sounds, was built there after a land swap between the city and the state. Now, not every swap worked out. At one point, the state was going to take over the old Ben West Library building in 8th and Union downtown and give Metro Schools the state-owned property that the Nashville School of the Arts is on. But that turned out to be way too complicated to make happen. But even so, take note of what I just said about the School of the Arts. It's on state land because when Metro Schools needed a new home for that magnet high school, the state had said, oh, hey, we have this high school we used to use for kids in state custody, but now that we've transitioned to foster care system, it's empty. Do you want to use it? For most of our history, the prevailing attitude between Nashville and the state of Tennessee was, we're in this together. Sure, there'd be tension points at times. But generally speaking, leaders at the two levels of government were mostly on the same team. Things look a little different now. But a couple of the biggest recent conflicts between the city and the state should be sorted out once and for all. At least, that's what it looks like. Last week, WPLN reported that not one, but two lawsuits over state laws that attempt to wrest control from Metro leaders will be heard by the state Supreme Court. Last week, WPLN reported that not one, but two lawsuits over state laws that attempt to wrest control from Metro leaders will be heard by the state Supreme Court. And those laws were part of a slate of measures considered or adopted in the 2023 legislative session that were widely understood to be payback from the state's GOP leaders for the city's lack of interest in potentially hosting the Republican National Convention. And last year, Mayor Freddie O'Connell brought former state lawmaker Darren Jernigan onto his staff in hopes that the legislative veteran would be able to help mend the relationship between the two layers of government. But some of the most recent news involving the mayor's office is that another high-ranking staffer, Development Officer Bob Mendez, stepped down roughly a week after his work was pointedly criticized to the press by House Speaker Cameron Sexton. The relationship between city and state has become profoundly dysfunctional by any measure. State government and Nashville are intrinsically linked. The state is one of the city's biggest employers. It's also a major landowner. To a lot of people in other parts of Tennessee, Nashville is shorthand for state government. At some point, the relationship has to return to a more cooperative state, doesn't it? In just a few minutes, talking about geriatrics. That's coming up after the newscast.
Funding for the Nash Villager podcast comes from the Hal Allen Clinic, specializing in minimally invasive robotic spine surgery and laser brain tumor surgery. For 40 years, the neurosurgeons of the Hal Allen Clinic have been national leaders in brain and spine surgery.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Starting this week, an unprecedented contingent of federal law enforcement begins arriving in Memphis. 13 federal agencies will be involved, including the National Guard, though the timing of their involvement is not yet clear. Governor Bill Lee calls the surge a generational opportunity to focus on violent criminal offenders.
Never before has a city in this country had access to the level of resources that is about to be made to the city of Memphis.
More than 300 Tennessee Highway Patrol officers will be assigned to the region. Lee also says $100 million in state funds will be granted for technology and downtown public safety efforts. When the National Guard arrives, members will not be armed or masked, and members won't make arrests unless local police ask for help. Still, people like Kathy Austin, who works for the social justice group Nashville Indivisible, thinks bringing troops to Memphis will do more harm than good.
Troops are not trained to police. They are trained to go to combat and shoot and kill people. And it puts the troops in an untenable position, and it puts the citizens in an untenable position. And we don't want troops here in our streets in Tennessee.
Austin helped organize a protest at the state capitol on Saturday. She says these funds would be better spent on education, affordable housing, after-school programs, and career training. All things, Austin says, will decrease crime. The city of Nashville is taking a hard look at hunger. Metro Social Services is releasing a series of 4 reports focused on food insecurity in different quadrants of the city. WPLN's Cynthia Abrams says the first release focuses on North Nashville, which has some of the highest poverty rates.
While around 8% of Davidson County households receive cash public assistance or SNAP benefits, more than 17% of North Nashville households do. Metro Social Services says this indication of hunger is tied to decades of poverty. The report points to the history of redlining, the interstate highway construction that divided the neighborhood, and recent gentrification that has driven up cost of living.
Meanwhile, tens of thousands of Tennesseans will have to do more paperwork for food assistance. That's because of the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. WPLN health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us folks might need to prepare for headaches and hurdles.
We know for sure that people aged 54 to 64 will have new requirements. So will parents caring for kids aged 14 to 18. But as for details like who gets an exemption,
a lot that's come out has been really fuzzy and not clear.
That's Signe Anderson, the Senior Director of Nutrition Advocacy at the Tennessee Justice Center. People who work for the SNAP program, like in the state's call center, might also be confused. Usually, when Congress makes changes to SNAP, states get a lot of advice and time to train staff on the updates. But this law change took effect immediately.
That doesn't happen, or that's never happened in the past.
There is also concern about backlogs. The Department of Human Services oversees SNAP, and it was already in legal trouble over wait times and staff shortages. Anderson says food banks and other service organizations can help with paperwork problems. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
Tennessee ranks around the middle for food insecurity rates. That being said, more than 1 in 10 families struggle to put food on the table, according to federal data. Parents are protesting a staff member shakeup at Nashville's Lipscomb Academy following a Charlie Kirk-related dress code controversy. Some students at the private Christian school for grades K through 12 wore red ties to honor Charlie Kirk, the divisive conservative media personality who was killed earlier this month. The head of the school, Jesse Savage, asked them to remove their ties to comply with the dress code. The school then announced that Savage would be moving to a new role as director of academics. It also apologized for how it handled students wearing ties to honor Kirk. The The school says the job change was already in the works, but some parents are unconvinced. They recently gathered on the school lawn to show support for Savage and seek more transparency from the school. A nonprofit leader in Gallatin is calling for a new kind of patriotism focused on service. In a memoir called Nowhere Near the Bottom, Fred Bailey writes about growing up poor in a segregated Sumner County. He didn't realize he was blind until he was in elementary school. He built a small real estate business, then launched a nonprofit called Children Are People to instill the value of hard work. He tells our Daily Show This Is Nashville, the founding fathers were bound together by their work ethic.
I think we need to do a lot less white supremacy and Black Lives Mattering and Democraticing and Republicaning, and let's do more Americaning. That's where I am. With a modicum of initiative, where can a blind Black man go from a farm to a Hall of Fame?
Earlier this year, Fred Bailey was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame by the organization's Tennessee chapter. When he attended Tennessee School for the Blind, Bailey was a two-time runner-up for the state championship, wrestling sighted opponents. Big football wins this weekend for Tennessee and Vanderbilt have now landed the two teams next to each other in the top 25 rankings. Tennessee won a close game in overtime and maintained its ranking at number 15. Vanderbilt, meanwhile, again won by a huge margin and moved up to number 16. The schools could be on a collision course as they will face off in their traditional rivalry game at the end of the season in late November. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. The word geriatric might conjure images of decline, disease, and, well, dying. But geriatrics is a fairly new field of medicine that is really about longevity, to help us age so that our health span matches our lifespan. In our monthly series, Next Age on This Is Nashville, host Blake Farmer and guests discussed how geriatrics is reframing aging.
We'll start with a patient who was more eager than most to find a geriatrician. Jean Gold-Yeager is 87. She knew who she wanted to be her geriatrician, and that was Dr. James Powers, who is also with us right by her. Welcome to you both. All right, so Jean, so when was this? Like in your 50s that you started?
It was in my late 60s, I think. I had always thought that the only time you went to a doctor was when you were sick. Something went wrong, you went to a doctor.
Yeah. Well, when did that mindset change?
Well, it changed when I got educated by my physician that it was important to have regular checkups because you could get things early and intervene before there was a major problem.
Yeah. So how did you go about your search for the right geriatrician for you in your late 60s?
I knew that Dr. Powers was a geriatrician, and he met all my criteria. He had not had a complaint. But I also chose him because he's younger than I am, and I did not want my doctor dying before I did.
Oh, what an interesting calculation there. So focus on the younger here. Dr. Powers, is that do many of your patients say, I'd like for you to be younger than me? Is that part of this discussion when you're intaking a new patient?
I think, yes, that is true. And it also reflects the fact that people really value the continuity of care, someone who knows you over time. And that's rare to find these days, but is so valuable, particularly when we're treating older adults. To know what their values are, what their wishes are, is so very important in how we care for them. Geriatrics is a relatively new field. It's only really been around. The first exam, if you will, was 1988. Is a new focus on maintaining health in older adults. We function in many different areas. We do a lot of consultations. We actually try to work with our colleagues in other fields, internal medicine, family medicine, cardiology, to try to make them, if you will, good geriatricians for their own patients.
Wow. Can you introduce us to this thing that I didn't know about before prepping for this episode, which is Stanford's New Map of Life project?
Yes, the Aging Center at Stanford has looked at our increasing longevity. Do you know that in about another 30 years, we will have 1 million centenarians in the United States?
Wow.
We've never before in human history had that many older adults living with us. And so the planning that they are emphasizing is that we should look at a lifespan as 100 years. Obviously, we won't all make it to 100, but if we can plan for that, if we can actually make the life valuable and really help people to understand that they have a long way to go and to take care of themselves so that lifespan is really one that brings a lot of joy and comfort throughout the lifespan.
Well, Jean, what's that meant for you as you kind of think about, I don't know, do you think about 100 years?
Yes, I do. The women in my family have lived far into their 90s, and so I expect that I will too. One of the concerns that older people have is, will I outlast my money?
Yeah.
So that is an issue for older people.
Is there any sort of secret to your general good health at 87 years old?
Well, I'm trying to take the advice of my geriatrician and exercise.
Yeah.
Lose weight, which has always been a horrible issue for me. Of course, I haven't smoked for a long time. I do occasionally have a nice gin and tonic, and so I'm trying to follow the advice of my doctor.
Well, Dr. Powers, what makes a geriatrician all that different from an internist, a family medicine doctor?
I think it's the comfort in managing chronic illness, in care management, and kind of connecting the dots. So that's actually the main thing that many of our new patients ask for, is someone who can kind of put the pieces together. You know, I can see my specialist, but they don't know what the other specialists are doing, and I'm lost.
And by chronic conditions, you're talking about, maybe diabetes, hypertension.
Sure, all of those things.
What surprises some of your patients about the care they're going to receive from you?
We end up taking away medications. We end up telling people they don't need to do certain tests.
Wait, talk about why that is, the taking away of medicines and tests.
Medications in particular. Older adults take more medications proportionately than any other portion of the population. And if you can reduce or eliminate unnecessary medications, you can prevent a lot of complications. It's believed that 20% of hospitalized patients have some major complication from medications. So sometimes reducing is actually helpful. Improve cognitive function, reduce fall risk, for example. So we do a lot of that. We also tell people they're doing fine. We encourage them to become cheerleaders. That's kind of fun.
You can hear the full episode on our website and the This Is Nashville podcast. And we do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. A little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.
Funding for the Nash Villager podcast comes from the Hal Allen Clinic, specializing in minimally invasive robotic spine surgery and laser brain tumor surgery. For 40 years, the neurosurgeons of the Hal Allen Clinic have been national leaders in brain and spine surgery.